Short Papers. Section 9. Money and Debt. By Charles Henry Mackintosh, better known as CHM. We have read your letter with deep interest and we can enter into your feelings. We believe the Christian is bound to provide for his family, day by day, bound to educate his children and put them in the way of earning an honest livelihood. All this is so plainly commanded in the New Testament as to admit of no question. But these sacred duties leave wholly untouched the question of hoarding up and of speculation. We do not believe in these latter at all. We believe that hoarding covers the soul with rust and speculation fills the heart and mind with care and anxiety. We love and honor diligent and honest toil, but Scripture tells us that the love of money is there, a root of all evil, and we do not believe that God's blessing rests upon his children when they become shareholders in worldly companies. You yourself, dear friend, have proved this. We think you would have done better had you purchased a house, either to live in or rent, than to invest your money in such a company as you describe. But all these matters must be arranged between the Lord and one's own conscience. We merely add that there is a vast difference between committing actual sin and falling short of a high-toned discipleship and personal devotedness. For ourselves, we earnestly long for the latter. We believe there is a sad lack of it in our day. The tide of worldliness is rolling rapidly in upon us, and we know of no more effective barrier with which to resist it than thorough heart devotedness and consecration to Christ and his cause. Where the real bent of the soul is Christward, one is not troubled with questions as to the right or wrong of this or that, but where it is not, the heart can muster up 1,000 plausible arguments. And it is labor lost to seek to answer such arguments, since there is no spiritual capacity to see the force of the answer. May God bless you, dear friend, and comfort your heart under your heavy loss. May your undivided confidence be in him, and he will prove himself better than 10,000 limited companies. We see nothing wrong in a Christian applying, in a becoming manner, for an advance of wages, provided it be not the fruit of covetousness, but simply for the support of his family. But we cannot attempt to lay down a rule. Very much will depend on the circumstances of the case. We have long been in the habit of explaining Luke 16 verse 9 by 1 Timothy 6 verses 17 through 19. We consider it a very fine commentary on the passage. Worldly riches are not what properly belongs to us as Christians. Our riches are heavenly, our blessings spiritual, in the heavenlies, in and with Christ. Worldly riches belong properly to the Jew, but to the Christian, they are the mammon of unrighteousness or the riches which do not rightly pertain to us. But if at our conversion, we happen to possess such riches, we are taught by Luke 16 verse 9 to make friends of them by spending them in the Lord's service and for the poor, thus laying up in store a good foundation against the time to come. The expression, that they may receive you, is idiomatic and may be rendered as follows, that they may be the means of receiving you. This is the true way to use riches, the very best mode of investing capital. It will yield 100-fold, and where is the bank that can come up to this? Many of God's people have lately been called to taste the bitter fruit of seeking after what they considered profitable investments. It is a question if the tremendous crashing of banks and limited companies has not been the result of God's dealing with his children who were connected with them. The very best thing we can do with our money is to spend it for the Lord. Then, instead of being rust on our souls, it will be treasure in heaven. But we must remember that Luke 16 verse 9 and 1 Timothy 6 verses 17 through 19 are addressed to disciples, not to the unconverted. If this be lost sight of, we shall only cast dust in the eyes of men by leading them to suppose that the gift of God can be purchased with money. To one who thought this of old, Peter said, "Thy money perish with thee." We take Romans 13 verse 8 in its plain, broad sense. We believe it teaches us to owe no man anything. Would to God it were more fully carried out. It is painful beyond expression to see the sad lack of conscience among professors as to the question of debt. We would solemnly call upon all who are in the habit of going in debt, to judge themselves in this matter and get out of a false position at once. It is better far to sit down to a dry crust and to wear a shabby coat, than live well and dress well at our neighbor's expense. We regard it as positive unrighteousness. Oh, for an upright mind! The first grand business of a person in debt is to get out of it. We must be just before we are generous.